Jackson. This is Joan Pelser. I'm going to be walking you through Chapter 3, Resilient Students Need Resilient Educators, from our book study, Resiliency in Schools Making It Happen for Students and Educators. Questions to consider during this chapter. What does resiliency look like for an educator? Now that we've taken a look at what resiliency is and what it looks like in our students, we're going to take a little self-reflection and look at it through our own lens. What are some of your personal areas of resiliency? Where have you improved or you've developed? And you can use these strengths to help develop in others. And then the last question, what/who can help or has helped to contribute to your resiliency? So has there been activities, approaches, environments, people in your life that has helped you develop your resiliency? Or are protective factors in having resiliency against the stressors or the risk factors? If educators cannot bounce back, how can students be expected to do so? Coming from page 34. So it's putting this precedence down, saying we need to look at our development as a lifelong learner and a lifelong grower of our resiliency, and how can we pass along some of our resiliency skills and demonstrate some of our resiliency skills to our students. Factors that inhibit resiliency among educators can be environmental and internal factors. Some of the environmental factors, there are three main ones. The first one, expectations are changing about what schools should do as well as how they should do it. With technology growing and different approaches that are best practices, we're constantly growing, and it's great to see those great practices, but how can we handle with the stress constantly in a growing field? Also, other things, the composition of the student population is changing. And then the last one, community-based criticism. How is the community support? Internal factors that can affect or inhibit resiliency. The educator workplace is significantly older than the past. So again, it's different than in the 1800s. And even as we grow into today, it looks different throughout the different generations. The next one, many veteran educators have not opted for extensive role changes, so they want to stick and specialize more in certain areas and fields. And also structurally restraints within the system. Also the major impetus that reformed the schools, the restructuring of that. So these can all be internal factors as well. Improving education resiliency, again, going back to that chapter 1, resiliency is individualized. So for educators, you bring certain resiliency characteristics and certain resiliency factors of strength to your room. Where do you see your strengths and your resiliency? And what areas do you see yourself still improving, since we are still our own selves lifelong learners in this resiliency? And what kind of mindset do you have about resiliency development? What kind of mindset do you have going throughout your day and your approach towards learning? So that can affect also your development of resiliency. Applying the resiliency wheel to educators. If you take a look on pages 40 to 44, it goes in a lot of detail about the different factors and how they can apply to increasing bonding. So I want you to take a look again at the resiliency wheel, how you can mitigate and build it. Really use a lot of self-reflection on what areas are your strengths and what areas you want to improve on. And you can take a look on these various pages on some different ideas of each of the categories and areas. A resiliency activity, you can find this on page 107 in your text. Okay, you can see there's a Y chart here. This is an exercise to see how you feel, how you look at things, and how they sound. Okay, so as you break this apart, again, this is intended to encourage participants to move beyond intellectualizing and getting in touch with your deeper feelings and concerns about resiliency building. Okay, so again, this is a reflection activity for your own self. The very ordinariness that makes teachers so important to children in school are being available and showing genuine interest, actively listening, ensuring their students know and understand the academic basics, modeling positivity, intervening on students' behalf if their well being is in jeopardy, and possessing humor, even. So, all these are excellent examples of how you can influence that resiliency development. So, again, just kind of bringing it back, you can see those risk factors. And how do you develop that resiliency? Role models can really help change the position of that fulcrum against the risk factors into the protective factors and developing resiliency in all students. But it is all in the personalization and the caringness and the development through stakeholders around students. So students are seen as resources. This quote's really interesting. Rather than utilizers of resources. It's all about that mindset, actively engaged in learning rather than passively receiving someone else's knowledge, producing rather than consuming, and offering help rather than always receiving help, and serving as leaders rather than followers or victims. So it's again taking a look, if this makes sense, what kind of mindset do you step in when it comes to working with students as an educator? Coming from page 44 in the text, individual effort is only part of the resiliency building process. The resiliency research clearly states that supportive environments are also necessary. So, again, it takes a village to grow a student, and it is a lifelong process. So, we ourselves are building resiliency, we're building resiliency in others, and we're supporting each other in it. Here's some quotes coming from a qualitative study on some different teacher perspectives on developing resiliency as educators and encouraging it in students. The teachers felt the connection between students and teachers was important and helped students to be comfortable at school. You can also, there was Mia, a student, said, I have several teachers, not only because I have connections through the adults at the school, but also just some teachers especially just do a really good job at reaching out and communicating with students, so allowing those support systems. There's another student who said, I personally have made close connections with teachers where I feel comfortable, like talking to them about things that I'm going through, but I feel like that might not be the case for every student. So again, being aware that this student feels a connection to his teachers. There's another student, Clara felt cared for when her teachers listened to her. I know that my opinion is valued, and I know that my school cares about me. They will listen to me if I have something to say. I have a whole support system, and that a lot of the teachers personally care about me. So again, you can see that caring, support themes, and those connection developments. And those are all part of our resiliency wheel and mitigating and building those resiliency. So, an assignment for you to look at, there's an article called Teacher Plateauing Article that's down below. And it's again helping build those self reflective practices and those concepts of where are you at in your practice